Now, Heroku is a container-based application. And whenever we talk about container-based application, the first thing which comes into the mind is Docker. People who are familiar with containerization concept or people who are aware of Docker, they right know how the Docker works and all that, right? So they really appreciate people who use Docker. They kind of right. I mean, at least I'm a fan of the Docker concept. So generally, people fall in love with the Docker concept itself. So the first container that we can think of is Docker-based containers. But we have Heroku. So if I have to compare them, there are a lot of benefits that I see in Docker, but it is purely subjective on your application requirements on which platform you want to choose. All right. So if I talk about the difference, as I mentioned, Heroku is a platform as a service and is used for building and running your applications. And it uses cloud. Whereas Docker is used for app development. And you can also develop building. This is common, building and running, right? So here also we'll have app development, and it is also used for deployment. Here also running means deployment. But this can be done on any machines. Okay, Dockers can be done on any machines. It doesn't need to have any hardware dependencies. Heroku, or the other way, it requires the Heroku cloud itself. It's a cloud platform. Okay. Then we may say the Docker, as I mentioned, it can be done on your local machine, a remote server, or any cloud services like Azure or AWS, right? Any service, cloud-based services. Because of its hardware dependency, we have a vendor lock-in. So there are a lot of cross dependencies. Some applications will not work. Okay. Whereas Docker, yes, there's no restriction. Heroku on the side, it's free, but it also has additional cost if you want to increase the application usage. Okay. Then here, Docker is open source. Of course, again, it directly depends on what kind of resources you're consuming, the cloud platform that you're going to use. So cost is directly incurred to that. As a Docker system itself, it's an open source. This is kind of a commonality. Heroku allows us to understand multiple languages, but it is, of course, OS dependent. Right? Heroku containers are, we call it as dinos in Heroku terminology, are OS dependent. It only works on Linux, whereas here there's no OS dependency at all. Docker containers can be containing any operating system. Dinos are easily scalable. The same thing here also, we have the pods which can be easily scalable for Docker. The disadvantage, of course, is that Heroku is like readily available platform. You just click and everything is ready. But here in Docker, difficult because of too much of flexibility. Sometimes it becomes difficult to configure and bring in our requirements. Right? It has so many options, so it becomes tricky. So this is a quick comparison between Heroku and your Docker.